It's said that Dostoevsky used to deal with annoying children with a very simple trick. He would tell them to go stand in a corner and try not to think about a white bear and come back when they'd been successful. In the 1800s, this was a very difficult thing for annoying children to do, and it occupied a lot of their time, which was the intention. You'll be happy to know the task is going to soon get much easier, because even under moderate projections, the shrinking summer ice is going to wipe out 2/3 of all the world's polar bears in the next 40 years. William James said, "A new idea is first condemned as ridiculous and then dismissed as trivial until finally it becomes what everybody knows." This is exactly the trajectory that our national conversation on global warming has taken. First, the critics said there's no evidence for warming. Then they said there is evidence, but the warming isn't human-made. Then they said the warming is human-made, but the consequences will be trivial. And now the person whom President Bush derided as Ozone Man has a Nobel Prize, and pretty much anyone who can read knows we're in trouble. The question is why? Not why is our planet getting warmer, but why, when we know it's getting warmer, are we twiddling our collective thumbs? Well, when the nice folks at Starbucks gave me the opportunity to say exactly 50 words to millions of pre-caffeinated and therefore highly suggestible Americans, I decided to write these. The human brain is the only object in the known universe that can predict its own future and tell its own fortune. The fact that we can make disastrous decisions, even as we foresee their consequences, is the great unsolved mystery of human behavior. When you hold your fate in your hands, why would you ever make a fist? The question is, why indeed? Why? After all, our brains evolved to respond to threats. We do it all the time, and we do it very well. A predator or a gunshot would instantly empty this theater. We're a very small, slow, fragile species, but we dominate our planet because we have a brain that's very good at detecting and deflecting threats. So why not global warming? It's because our brain isn't evolved to treat all threats the same way. We respond to threats that have 4 properties that are intentional, immoral, imminent, and instantaneous. Threats that have these 4 features trigger our brain's ancient alarm system, and they spur us on to action, and threats that don't have them don't. Global warming has none of these properties. Consider, for example, the first one, intentionality. Our brain, you know, devotes specific chunks of its precious real estate only to things that are wildly important for our survival. So vision has an area, language has an area, shopping has no area. It turns out that our brain devotes specific real estate to thinking about the minds of other people. We have special networks devoted entirely to processing information about what human agents think and feel and want and intend. Indeed, some scientists believe that our need to understand the minds of other people is actually what drove the remarkable, unprecedented growth of the human brain in the last 2 million years. Now, understanding others is so crucial to our survival that we have all become fetishists. We've developed an obsession with anything human, which leaves us hypervigilant for any signs of human agency. That's why we see faces in clouds and we never see clouds in faces, right? Nobody's ever mistaken the Virgin Mary for a tortilla, but the other way around all the time. Now, our obsession with things intentional explains why we worry more about an underwear bomber, annual death toll 0, than about influenza. Annual death toll in America, 40,000 people. Why? Influenza is a natural accident. Underwear bombing is an intentional action. And the smallest intentional action captures our attention in a way that the largest natural accident just doesn't. You know, if this airplane had been hit by lightning and then crashed into the World Trade Center, none of you could tell me the date on which it happened. The fact is, global warming isn't trying to kill us, and that's a damn shame. Because if climate change were some kind of nefarious plot visited upon us by bad men with worse mustaches, right now we would be fighting a war on warming with or without congressional approval. Now, the second thing about global warming, the second reason that it doesn't put our brains on orange alert, is that it doesn't violate our moral sensibilities. It doesn't cause our blood to boil, at least not figuratively, because it doesn't confront us with anything that feels repulsive or indecent or impious or disgusting. Moral emotions are aroused by the kinds of things that the brain has been concerned with for millions of years: food and sex, not atmospheric chemistry. And that's why every society has elaborate moral rules about who you can kiss and what you can eat, and none whatsoever about when you can run your air conditioner. Our brains respond to violations of these moral rules with feelings of alarm and disgust, and those feelings compel us to action. If global warming were caused by gay sex or caused by the practice of eating puppies, Americans would right now be massing in the street calling for its end. The third reason that global warming doesn't ring our ancient alarm is that it's a threat to our tomorrow, but it's not a threat to our evening. Like every other animal on this planet, we respond very well to clear and present danger. Our brain is essentially a get-out-of-the-way machine that is constantly surveilling the environment, trying to find things out of whose way it should right now get. And that's why we can duck a baseball in milliseconds. Now, brains did this for hundreds of millions of years after they appeared on this planet. That was their primary job. And then very recently they learned a new trick. They learned to make predictions about the future. In other words, they learned how to get out of the way of things that are not yet coming. This new talent is wonderful, but from nature's point of view, it's still in beta testing. It's still in the early stages of R&D. A very small part of our brain is responsible for thinking about the future, and a very large part is responsible for getting the hell out of the way of a baseball. This much for now, this much for eternity. That's why we care less about the future than any rational analysis suggests we should. If you give people a choice between getting $100 now and another amount in 1 year, they basically demand about $200 in order to wait. That is an interest rate that would make the loan sharks at MasterCard roll their eyes. It takes a huge amount of cajoling and nagging and pleading and training to get people to do anything on behalf of their future selves, from saving for retirement to flossing. And it turns out only 28% of Americans even say they floss, and some of them are lying. The fact is, if the polar bears were going to be extinct Friday, you would be hanging out with them instead of me. The fourth feature that global warming lacks is this. Our brains are extremely sensitive to changes in temperature, weight, pressure, sound, light, all physical dimensions, but the rate at which things change makes a big difference. If the rate of change is slow enough, changes go undetected. Beware, young men, beware. Changes like this happen one hair at a time, okay? There is no day in which you wake up and say, I'm a bald man. In fact, if you don't have a spouse to inspect you, you might never actually realize it happened. Now, we accept these gradual changes we would never accept if they happened abruptly. If I'd woken up one day without that and suddenly looked that way, I would have gone running to the nearest hair club for men begging for plugs. Okay? The fact is that we accept changes that happen slowly, changes that we would never accept if they, changes that happen slowly that we would never accept if they happen quickly. Many environmentalists say global warming is happening too fast. No, it's happening too slowly. It's not happening nearly quickly enough to get our attention. The impurity of our air and our water has increased dramatically in my lifetime, but we all tolerate it because it's happening one day at a time. There are warnings today: don't eat fish, don't swim in